about psychological growth without sorting through the jargon, you're in the right place. This is the Relational Psych podcast. I'm your host, licensed therapist Tyson. On this show, we learn about the processes and theories behind personal growth and experience a little bit of it ourselves. Join me twice a month for candid conversations about therapy and psychological concepts with real mental health professionals using understandable language and simple experiments that you can try yourself. Keep in mind, this podcast does not constitute therapeutic advice, but we might help you find some. And today, my guest is Ally Raye.
Hello.
Ally, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Ally is a virtual assistant for mental health clinicians and practices and the owner of Virtual Ally LLC or Virtual Ally LLC?
It's both. It's cheeky. That's why I like it.
Oh, but how should I pronounce it for this audio medium?
Virtual Ally is fine.
Okay, cool. Virtual Ally LLC. She is a chronic tea drinker and overthinker, usually at the same time.
Yes.
And today, we are going to answer the question, how do I get connected with a therapist at Relational Psych?
Yeah. Would you like me to just dive right in?
Sure.
All right. So my entire role is to aid in that, to help people get connected with the right clinician at whatever that looks like. So when someone reaches out to me, I know that they're already kind of usually overwhelmed with the amount of just kind of information and options that there are. We talk about insurance, different modalities, different specialties, preferences and type of clinician, all of those kinds of pieces. And my job is really just to help them walk through kind of what they're looking for and if who the best fit at Relational Psych might be. And people can reach out many, many different ways, most commonly through the website, which is a good idea to kind of look at the different clinicians in general, just to see who Relational Psych is in general, the vibe, for lack of a more professional verbiage, and if there are any clinicians that they're drawn to at the start, but that's not necessary. They can schedule a time to meet with me, and I can call them. Alternatively, the classic sending me an email, giving me a call, and leaving me a voicemail. All of that information is also on the website. And then I reach back out, and we start what's called the initial call.
So it sounds like the process that someone will go through is if they're looking for a therapist, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed out, they go to our website, or even like in the footer of the show notes is the contact info, and there's the phone number and our like main hello email address, and those go right to you. So if someone reaches out, and it doesn't matter if the message is like, I saw Dave's profile and I think he'd be a great therapist for me, I'd like to meet with him. Or if someone is just like, I need a therapist, help me. You
That's
get that
me.
email and you respond.
Yeah, I try to respond as quickly as I can. I am a Monday through Friday gal, so anything outside of those times I get back as soon as possible. But yeah, usually what I find is the best is a phone call. It's just easier to run through questions and, questions that come to mind. For some folks, it's definitely daunting to make phone calls, so it's a little bit more comfortable to send an email and, or a text. I've had that too.
Wow.
Which is pretty convenient. And then we kind of go from there.
Yeah. So what kinds of conversations do you have with people? What information? Let's say someone comes in just like, hey, I need a therapist. And that's where the conversation starts. Like, what questions do you have? What are you going to be asking about?
Yeah, so usually it starts with a simple hello, and are you comfortable telling me a little bit more about what's going on and what you're looking to speak with a clinician about? And if someone's uncomfortable talking to me, since I'm not a clinician, that's a-okay. Or sometimes, just a little bit of an overview. And sometimes I get the whole story, and I appreciate all different avenues. And then we kind of talk about if there are any specific modalities. Some people come in specifically looking for CBT or, kind of things like that. And some people, go ahead.
And for our listeners who might not know, a modality is like a particular way of practicing therapy. So some people come in wanting cognitive behavioral therapy, that's CBT. Some people maybe have got a referral for dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, that got name dropped in the first episode of She-Hulk, that particular modality. And so sometimes people already have a preference, and you'll talk to them about that.
Yeah. And if sometimes folks are more comfortable with a specific gender of clinician, we do talk about that as well. Whether in-person or virtual appointments or a mix of both is a better fit. And then, of course, we talk about the financial piece and insurance.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the financial piece and insurance, because that's a big one. And I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about it. What's the deal with insurance?
So we Relational Psych are out of network. It just means that we don't bill your insurance directly. So it's a little bit of an extra step. We do provide something that is called a super bill, which is quite poorly named. It is actually a receipt. Why it's called a bill, I have no idea, but here we are.
It's not just a bill, it's a super bill.
It's a super bill, but you've already paid the bill, so it's a receipt. So anyone who is out of network should be able to provide super bills, just like us. And what a super bill has on it is everything that your insurance would get from us if we were to bill them directly. So a CPT code, which is the session code. It has, of course, the date and time. It's got some important information about the clinician, different pieces like that. So we, unless requested more frequently, Relational Psych gives super bills once a month then the client submits that super bill, like submitting a claim to their insurance, and then depending on their plan, the insurance might reimburse them.
Yeah, and we will likely do future episodes about insurance, because that's a really big topic and a really big concept. But my understanding of it is that part of the reason why we practice this way and why we aren't in network with insurance is because the insurance company becomes a part of the treatment when you're in network with them. They have legal right to access your notes. They have legal right to make recommendations about what kind of treatment you get, how many sessions you get, things like that. And the way that we practice here is not super insurance friendly. A kind of relational and psychodynamic approach is one that tends to take its time and tends to not be able to tell you exactly what's going to happen over the next 5 sessions, unlike something that's more structured, like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy. So insurance companies tend to get kind of cranky about those things. And I have worked in contexts where we were in network with insurance companies, and I have had to end treatment early with people. I thought that the work was still going on and they wanted to keep seeing me, but the insurance company said no. And so choosing to work out of network means that that's not going to happen. It does mean that likely your insurance won't cover as much of the session, if they'll cover any, but it also means that you're not going to have an insurance company showing up and telling you what you can and can't do in therapy.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take.
Yes, definitely. And there are some insurances that I'm always a little bit more hopeful about when somebody calls in, and some that a little bit less so.
Yep. And that's the nature of healthcare in America in the year of our Lord 2023. So let's say that somebody has this conversation with you. Let's imagine an example client. I've contacted you. I said, I'm dealing with some depression. I'm just feeling low. I'm feeling bad. And I want to work with a male therapist, and I have Primera Blue Cross insurance. like, do you say, okay, how about this guy? And like, what do you do then? Do you like send a link to their profile, or do you just schedule something? What happens next?
Yeah, so it definitely differs a little bit on the person and how the rest of the conversation has gone as well, as to know kind of comfort level of, there's a couple of different avenues. So definitely a recommendation, let's say in this case, it would be you, Tyson, or David. And I would say, have you taken a look at their profiles just to see if they've even taking a look, and it's also letting them know that that profile is available to view. And then the next two steps are either, if they want to pursue, are either a free 15-minute phone call with that clinician directly. For some folks, for everyone really, the fit for clinician and the client is massive, makes a massive difference. And some people want to do just that quick 15-minute phone call. Sometimes that's plenty for them to know if it feels like the right fit. And then the other option is doing a full 45-50-minute intake appointment with the clinician, which gives a lot more room to kind of, again, for lack of more professional verbiage, feel out the vibe. And is this a good fit? Is this someone that I feel comfortable talking to, especially about these topics that I'm not really comfortable talking about anybody else with?
Yeah, and we actually have a whole episode about the fit, therapeutic fit.
Oh, good.
That will, I think it'll come out before this one, but it'll be pretty nearby. So listener, if you're listening to this and are curious to hear more about this idea of the fit and why it matters, we got a whole episode for you about that with Dr. Kim. So
cool.
Yeah, and it sounds like these are like the two ways of first initially testing the fit, right? Is that 15-minute phone call, which is free, or just scheduling a full 45-minute first session, which would be a first session. So that would be something that would be billed at the full rate, reimbursable if you have out-of-network benefits on your insurance, all that jazz.
Yeah, some people even use that initial appointment as a kind of a test for the insurance too. They do the one, we submit a super bill, and we find out how much we get back. Yeah,
because it's not a very translucent process. It's pretty opaque. You never really know what's going to come out the other side. You can guess, but yeah. What if? So let's say that I'm theoretical client A, and you've talked with me, and it sounds like either Tyson or Dave would be a good fit. What do you do then when you've got multiple options?
When I've got multiple options, sometimes it then comes down to availability. Some people are only available at certain times, or a clinician is only available at certain times. So we'll definitely look at that. And some folks will specifically request, let's do a 15-minute phone consult with both, which I understand. And if it feels like a really, really good fit, there's usually some ability to find some scheduling that works out. But usually the next then conversation is, what times work for you?
Yeah. Cool. And if I were in a situation where like Dave fit better for my schedule, does that like lock me in? Am I stuck then? if Dave ends up, if I don't get along with Dave, or it turns out that Dave like went to high school with my partner or something, like am I stuck, or what happens then?
Not even close. It's so lovely. The clinicians want everybody to feel comfortable with who they're with, and there's no hard feelings if it doesn't feel like a good fit, if scheduling something dramatic changes, something happens in life, or anything else really. It is not set in stone by any means. And yeah,
what I'm hearing you say is that you're never locked in. It sounds like there's always flexibility, and I think what's important to my mind for this conversation is that listeners understand that flexibility is there from moment one. Like, as a clinician, I would hope, if for whatever reason my work with someone isn't working out, they'd tell me. And sometimes they don't feel comfortable telling me. And you're a point of contact they've had at that point. Like, if I had a client who didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason telling me, hey, this isn't going to work for me and you, but still wanted to try someone else, I would hope they would email Ally. They'd say, hey, this isn't working for me. Can I try that other person? Like, that's allowed. That's fine. Ally and I will figure that out together. My feelings about that, they're not important. What's important is that you, listener, client, get the help that you need. That's what we care about most.
I love when people reach out to me and say, hey, can I set up a consult with this other person that we talked about? Not because, I'm glad it wasn't a good fit. No, I'm just so glad that they're still trying. It's such an intimidating process. It's really, really easy to feel defeated when somebody's not the right fit. So whenever somebody reaches out to me, I absolutely, yes, let's try again. Let's find someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So what if for whatever reason, because the kind of therapy I'm looking for isn't offered here, or it doesn't work for my finances, or I've tried out the therapist and I just don't click with anybody, like, are we just out of luck at that point? Like, what happens then?
Yeah, well, we certainly don't just kind of pack you up and send you on your way. I love I love to help people, find someone else. So I can't be quite as in-depth or knowledgeable about other practices as I am with relational psych, but we do have a list of clinicians throughout Seattle and just generally Washington of clinicians that either we've connected with in the past in some way. Some of our clinicians know them directly, or whatever that looks like, who are either maybe in network with someone's insurance, who have maybe more of a specialty that they're looking for. So I have a list of clinicians that I can pull from that I can say, hey, they might be a good fit. Here's their information if you'd like to reach out to them.
Yeah, great. I bet you I was on that list before I was an employee.
You were, yeah.
Cool. That's neat. That's fun. Awesome. Well, let's see. So to recap the process, someone finds out about Relational Psych through the website, through the podcast, through Psychology Today. They reach out to one of the contact options available, the show notes here, the contact form on the website, the phone number that they can text or call, the email address they can send an email to. And you start a conversation with them in whatever format there is most comfortable to them. And that conversation, it can be as in-depth or as surface as they feel comfortable with. And then you make suggestions based off of what you know about us and how we practice, you and who we are and who we work with. You say, it sounds like you might work well with person X. And then you schedule a 15-minute phone call or a full 45-minute first session, and we go from there. And then throughout the process, if for whatever reason the client doesn't feel comfortable or wants some administrative support, you're there. And listener, I've been on email threads with Ally about like problems with billing issues and scheduling issues and email addresses being wrong and letters and all sorts of things. And she's available. She's around, which is pretty nice.
I try.
Yeah, you do a good job, I think. So we've covered like the logistics and answered the question, how do I get set up here? And I am curious, and I imagine our listeners might be curious too, about like how do you get into this position, into this role? Like, how does someone get there? It's not a job that shows up at job fairs, right? Like, people don't generally, I mean, I don't know. I haven't been in high school for a while, but I don't remember any of my like, high school career counselor talking about this kind of a job as a thing. And then also, how do you decide how to match people up? Like, we've talked about vibes, and like vibes are important for therapy to work out. We have a whole episode about it. Like, are you kind of doing a vibe check too? Like, what sort of thoughts do you have? How do you make the decision? So yeah, those are my 2 questions.
Yeah. It's a fair question. I graduated with a degree in college in psychology and knew that I myself didn't want to be a therapist. I just knew that I wouldn't be able to, quote unquote, leave it at work. But I still love the world of therapy and what it offers. So I wanted to be involved in some way. And after I got out of college, I got very lucky, and there was an administrative position open in a therapy office here where I live. And that didn't last quite as long. I learned about burnout very, very quickly. But after a little while, I missed working with these kinds of folks. I missed, even though I don't get to see how someone, turns out, how their life goes, I do get the wonderful, I guess satisfaction is the right word, of knowing that I have connected them with someone that can help them and that is going to be a good fit. And I also wanted to travel. I'm in my mid-20s. It's very classic. I wanted to travel. But obviously I need money to work. So I wondered, is there a way that I can do this and travel? And that was in mid-2019 when virtual assistants were a thing, but still, so I kind of, I shot my shot, and I got very, very lucky, and a therapy clinic reached out to me, and I started working with them, and they introduced me to Relational Psych, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. So do you work with multiple clinics right now?
I do, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are all in the Seattle area, or like around where you are, or?
Seattle, Lower California, and Dallas, Texas.
Wow. So not a lot of competition between those 3.
No, which is
referring going on. Yeah,
it's kind of nice. But there have been a couple occasions. I mean, those are 3 quote unquote hot spots, so I have had people who have moved. I've had a client who was seeing a clinician in Dallas who moved to Seattle, and I was like, you know what? I know someone who you might be a good fit with. So that's been really cool.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Cool.
And for the vibe check, yes, I am doing somewhat of a vibe check. Like, obviously a voice over a phone can't tell you everything.
Sure. Yeah.
But just general demeanor. Sometimes, the way that someone talks about something, I don't want to specify just language, but sometimes, if a clinician says, if somebody calls and says that their kid is mature for their age, that's a green flag for me, and so sometimes those specific phrasings and things like that, I'm like, I know what clinician that would be great for. And yeah, so if that makes sense.
I'm remembering our conversation around that, because listener, when I joined Relational Psych, Ally and I had a conversation. I filled out like a document, including like a bunch of like how I practice and the people I like to work with. And we had a conversation afterwards about what I'd written down. And in that conversation, one of the things that I said was, I love working with people who are too smart for their own good. And I think it sounds like you heard what I was saying, and you also heard the way I was talking about it. You sort of are like picking up like, okay, Tyson likes working with people who are, a little clever, a little quick. That's can be fun and for him. And also like maybe people who are a little bit playful, right? Or like whatever else is in that phrase, too smart for their own good. Maybe a little existential. I don't know.
Yes.
It sounds like you took that in and you take that into account when you're on the phone with someone and trying to see like who might work well with them.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
That's why I like having those meetings. It's so much nicer to get to know you like through talking to you rather than just kind of what you write down. And that's why we offer those consultations too, because your bios on the website are fantastic, but that's all they are.
Right. Right. Yeah. They are. Yeah. There's something that you get having an interactive conversation with someone
Mm-hmm.
that you don't really get even in a context like this, right? Like, listener, if you're listening to the podcast and you hear one of the providers on this show and you're like, oh, they sound good, I encourage you to still have a conversation, because you know what it's like to listen in on a conversation with that person, but there's something special about actually having a conversation with someone that we want you to experience. So we like to do our experiment and further learning sections on this podcast. Did you have a experiment that you'd like to offer to the listener or invite them to try something out?
Yeah, my experiment is not much of a mystery, but take a look at profiles on the website. Kind of learn the different language that therapists will use in their bios, and is there a specific I keep using the word vibe. I need to come up with something else.
It's a good word.
But what feels comfortable for you? What do you start to look at, and what starts to kind of maybe turn you off to different profiles? It's a good way to kind of get a sense of start getting a sense of what you're looking for.
Great. Yeah. And yes, you can find those at relationalpsych.group. And then you can also, there's 7 profiles there. And if you go to a website like Good Therapy or Psychology Today, you can find literally thousands of others. So, start with ours, obs. But
you could cut this out if you'd like, but I love Psychology Today. It's got its flaws, but especially for folks looking for very specific insurances or very specific specialties, Psychology Today is great.
Yeah. When I was doing a lot of like short-term stabilization work, I use Psychology Today all the time for long-term referrals because it has really powerful filters.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a basic place to start and you have specific things you need, I think Psychology Today is a great website to use. So again, start with our website.
Yes.
But then Psychology Today is great. And any other further learning you'd suggest if people are curious or interested in any of this process, or even just like what you do, like the sorts of things that you get up to? Like how could someone learn more about that?
Yeah, there are a couple of virtual assistant like Facebook groups. Sometimes they're area specific, sometimes they're not. There are healthcare specific virtual assistant groups, and there are, I'm sure, hundreds, if not thousands, of blogs written about what virtual assistants do. I list some of what I specifically do on my website, which is virtualally.info. Just kind of a basic, anyone who has done administrative work knows what I'm talking about. I can tell you the majority of what I do, but all of the odd little tasks are what make it interesting.
All right. Yeah, it sounds like a position that is like there's a lot of systems that you refine and practice over and over again, and there's also just like a lot of real little random things that just happen and you gotta like react. So,
yeah, well, and it's lovely in this position because I get to meet so many different people, and there's a lot of trust, and I value that so much because when people are reaching out to therapy, it's generally not because they're having a good time. Right. So it's so lovely to be able to be that space and be able to help welcome someone into a practice or with a clinician of, okay, hey, well, we got you. All right.
Yeah.
So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's great. We got you. Oh, that's sweet. Cool. Well, so before we go, people can find you at is it virtualally.info?
And virtual ALLY.
ALLY. Great. And then do you have any other thing that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so this is a little bit odd, and by the time this comes out, we're a little past holidays, but it's good information anyway. I was recently reminded instead of donating clothes and some of the things that often we're giving away, especially post holidays and with the new year, rather than giving it to Goodwill or an ARC or Salvation Army, which absolutely is still a good thing to do, but also women's or men's shelters. I definitely had a little bit of guilt. I'd never really thought about it, of donating straight to the shelters. So that's what I'm planning on doing here this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, this will come out right around time for spring cleaning, so
cool beans.
People are clearing stuff out. That's the plug, is consider finding somewhere nearby a shelter where you can take your stuff directly instead. Maybe even call ahead and see if there's anything in particular that they need.
I like that.
Cool. Awesome. Do you want to advertise that you're hiring?
I am hiring. That is on my website. I've got a specific hiring page. Yeah, if there's any administrative experience, specifically healthcare administrative experience, and someone who's looking for some flexibility, please take a look. Please reach out. Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the episode, Ally. I really appreciate it. This has been, I find this really interesting and fascinating, and it's like it's a side of the work that's so important, and people don't write as many books about it. So I'm glad that we could shed a little bit of light on it. And listener, if you have any questions that were unanswered that you'd like answered in a future podcast, feel free to email us, or you can also just email that hello at with any question, really, at any point. And Ally will respond, and that's hello@relationalpsych.group.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
The Relational Psych podcast is a production of Relational Psych, a mental health clinic providing depth-oriented psychotherapy and psychological testing in person in Seattle and virtually throughout Washington State. If you are interested in psychotherapy or psychological testing for yourself or a family member, links to our contact information are in the show notes. If you are a psychotherapist and would like to be a guest on the show, or are a listener with a suggestion for someone you'd like us to interview, you can contact me at podcast@relationalpsych.group. The Relational Psych podcast is hosted and produced by me, Tyson Connor. Carly Claney is our executive producer, with technical support by Sam Claney and Ally Raye. Our music is by Ben Lewis. We love you, buddy. We did it!